Well, earlier we showed you that surprising new poll out of Iowa. It shows Vice President Harris up 3 points over the former president, 47% to 44%, which is a big turnaround from the same poll in September. Now that...
Do you think Cooper's skin feels like skin, or do you think it feels like the way the androids in the Alien franchise would feel? You know what I mean? Like he would be filled with milk instead of blood? Like, how old is he? I mean, he looks phenomenal. I'm not digging on him at all. It's just like 57 and not a single visible pore.
Number is still within the margin of error, so there's no clear leader. But a swing like this, and from such a well-respected pollster with a long track record in Iowa, has some wondering if this could be an indication that Harris may overperform in the Midwest Tuesday night, including even in battlegrounds like Wisconsin. Today, while speaking in Pennsylvania, the former president attacked the pollster and said the poll was intentionally skewed to favor Harris.
You know things are looking not so great for Republican internals if they're going out of their way to attack an Iowa pollster just a few days before the election. Like, there is absolutely no way an outlier poll in this environment would reasonably sway the election. It really does make me think, and I maybe it's copium, it really does make me think that Republicans are fully aware of their internals looking bad, and they're relying on the ambiguity, like the everything being 50-50, as a way to prop up their arguments for all the stop the steal bullshit we're going to be subjected to. Like, they don't want people to think it's going to be a landslide, because then everyone will just accept that Donald Trump lost.
I got a poll, I'm 10 points up in Iowa. One of my enemies just puts out a poll, I'm 3 down. Why do they announce a poll that's highly skewed toward Democrats and liberals? Why do they do that? When you read it, they interviewed far more Democrats than they did Republicans. Why do they do that? Why do they do that? And I guess there's a law that they have to say that, because they would have preferred not having to say that.
Well, I'm joined now by Jay-Ann Selzer, whose firm, Selzer and Company, conducted the poll. And back with us is David Axelrod and John King. And first of all, how surprised were you at these numbers? What do you make of them?
Selzer just looks so trustworthy. If you told me white Iowan woman, I would go, ugh, but then you showed me her, I'd go, ah, you know?
And also, obviously, feel free to respond to what the former president said.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. We first saw the numbers on Tuesday morning. Monday night was the first night in the field. And I walked into the office and I'd seen overnight, I'd seen the unweighted data, and it had Harris leading. And my assistant said, "Did you see the data?" And I said, "I'd like to see weighted data." So the weighting is how we take care of things that would make our poll unrepresentative. We align things with a known population, and we extract from a larger group the people who meet our definition of likely voters, and that is people who've already voted and people who say they will definitely vote.
Again, this is what I talk about building a model to interpret the data that you get.
So when former President Trump says we interviewed more Democrats, well, that's what came out of our data. We did nothing to make that happen. I'm a big believer of keeping my dirty fingers off the data. So we did it the way we did it when he won in our final poll twice in 2 election cycles. Very same method.
He said you're an enemy of his.
I want to believe it so badly. Guys, listen, okay? I'm going to stay a socialist. However, I might become a shitlib for a few weeks if the Bliowa prophecy ends up being indicative and we get a sweep, the likes of which literally no one predicted. I just for a little bit, okay?
Clearly that's not the case. You have had polls in the past which have shown that Hillary Clinton wasn't going to do as well in Iowa as a lot of people thought.
You know the Chud Jack where you see him from behind and he's got a muscular back and he's got votes cast for Harris, 20 tallies, Black Lives Matter, the trans flag and stuff. And it's the Chud Jack and you see him from behind, he's looming. Where it's going to be that energy for a bit.
You have been, delivered news which has upset Democrats and upset Republicans and people all over the map in the past.
Right, without favor, one
oh
side or the other.
God.
I think.
Yeah, that guy, that's the energy. What's the top reply to this video? Oh, Loud ass copyright music.
That the best news I can deliver, and this is true of my non-election related clients, the best news I can deliver is my best shot at what's true. Because then you know what you're working with and you can make adjustments as you need to. But I can't see that there's any advantage to me or my career in messing with the numbers to make it look a particular way. There's no upsides.
It's worth noting that Democratic voter enthusiasm is at 2008 levels. Man, fucking Hillary Clinton, man. God. Can somebody find me that map of what the electoral college vote is going to look like if all the polls are as wrong as they are about Iowa, if we assume this poll is correct? Like, what if we extrapolate the results from this poll, what the map's going to look like?
I want to bring in John and David Axelrod because they all know you and respect you, and I know they want to ask you questions. John, I know you've been reading through the poll. What sticks out to you? And feel free to ask Ann whatever you'd like.
Yeah, quick piece of history first. This is the 2020 map. Let's just bring out Iowa. And you say, a lot of people out there probably saying, oh, come on, that can't be possible. Look at that big Trump win in 2020 and look at this big Trump win in 2016. But
I believe this map isn't going to happen, but if it did, the shit livery might last a little while longer than a few weeks. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Blexis, Blorda. Brothers, if we get this map, I think this is Blamerica. There's no reason to separate by state. We are united. Arms linked.
you have Mr. Axelrod at the table as well. It is possible. It is possible. It's been a while, but Iowa voted overwhelmingly for Obama in 2012 and 2008 as well. The people of Iowa follow the news, and there are a lot of independents in Iowa. Here's what I want to pop up for Ann, and as I bring it up right now, I just want to say, despite what the former president just said, I've known Ann for a long time, and I've known her work for a long time. She's one of the best in the business, Anderson, and she's absolutely right. The data is what the data is, and you report the data, and then you talk about it. So here's interesting, Ann, in your poll, among female voters in Iowa, overall, a 20-point gap, 56 to 36%, number one. And now I want to bring
Iowa
up,
when Dems choose a black candidate. Literally like the white guy in the Kenta cloth with the hat, absolutely.
You're always looking late in a campaign. Where are the independents going, right? If the Democrats are loyal to their candidate, the Republicans are loyal to theirs, where are the independents going? These are independent female voters in Iowa. Look at that. Wow. 57 to 29. My question for you, Ann, would be, why? The six-week abortion ban in Iowa took place a couple months ago. Trump has been pretty dark in his rhetoric in recent days, insulting the vice president quite a bit. Is it something she's saying, something he's saying, something within Iowa that's changing the climate, all of the above?
I'm going to go with all of the above because I can't single one thing out. I will note that our previous polls this year, in February and in June, Trump led with independents.
Right.
So what happened between June and September? Biden left the ticket. Kamala Harris joined it. There was a surge of enthusiasm. We saw it. There was a surge in the proportion of people we talked to who said they would definitely vote. That was our criterion in June. And now we have an additional criterion if you've already voted. And especially among older people, it's over 90% incidence.
Nancy was cooking, Vosh. We should feel shame. There is a timeline where, like, in retrospect, Nancy Pelosi's legacy is held alongside, like, some of the greatest political strategists in, like, Democratic history, purely on the basis of what she orchestrated here, not even counting for everything else. I'm sure she's really good at, like, insider trading too, but, like, for the most part, like, this on its own.
Of people that we talk to in that age group who say they're going to vote, and they tend to vote for Kamala Harris, and women in that age group specifically and strikingly.
And let me ask you something, and I don't want to geek out here because you sort of touched on it, but we hear a lot of pollsters, and Nate Cohn wrote about this in the New York Times this morning, talking about non-response bias, that to try and explain why polls have been so off in the past few cycles in capturing some of this infusion of Trump voter that they hadn't spoken with and hadn't been included in their sample. And so they've tried to find ways to weight their polls to account for that and cut that number down. You don't believe that is that's the way to go. Explain it.
Well, I can control what I can control. I can weight to known population parameters.
By the way, when you say
So
weight,
we talk-
I think a lot of people don't know what that means. What does that mean?
it will sound very anti-democratic. It's some people get a little bit more than one vote, and some people get a little bit less than one vote. So if we end up in our sample and we take a sample of
I get more than
all
one.
adults in the state of Iowa, and if we've got too many who are older or too many that are women, we adjust it to look like the census. So we're weighting within congressional districts because they're not all aged appropriately. Some of them have state universities and so on. But we want to adjust our data so it looks like a cross-section of the state of Iowa when it comes to age, sex, geography in particular, race, sometimes education, not so much anymore. And then from that bigger pool, over 1,000 people, we pull out the 808 who met one of our criteria as to be a likely voter. They've already voted, or they say that they will definitely vote. And so from that, cross-section, proper cross-section of the state, if older people are more likely to say they're going to vote, they show up in more plentiful numbers in our likely voter sample.
I see.
It's just that easy. So what I say is I'm allowing my data to reveal to me this future electorate. And the people who are using the exit polls or the recalled vote, which I don't think of as very reliable at all, I call that polling backward. So they're
That's what,
adjusting
okay, yeah,
their
she's
data to fix
describing
the last mistake. I've always allowed my data to show me, without fear or favor, my best shot at what this future electorate is going to be.
she's basically making the same claim that I've made here, that basically like that many pollsters are assuming what the results ought to be and then massaging the polling data they get and accounting for it to like work back to get a result that feels like it's right. And she's saying like, well, no, I'm just taking the data and, weighing it by population and delivering it.
Look like.
Can I just second John's point?
Yeah,
which is I've worked with you, Ann, over the years. You've polled races I was involved in, and you are a person of great integrity and skill. So when you say something, people listen.
All right. Ann Selzer.
Excuse me?
Integrity and skill. So when you say something, people listen.
All right. Ann Selzer, really great to have you on. Thank you so much.
Can't believe he'd do her like that. What is this? Veterans for Responsible Leadership. What is this? Destiny.
I want to talk about why the polls have been so off up until now, and it's extremely unlikely that the race between Harris and Trump is going to be as close as most models are predicting. Because the Fort Hayes poll from Kansas and the Selzer poll from Iowa are kind of confirming what a lot of us already suspected, and that is that Harris is actually doing a lot better than initially projected, and there might even be a blue blowout for Harris. The first thing is that a lot of American mainstream polls like Atlas Intel, Tip Insights, Hart Research, and the Emerson College, which are the ones getting cited most often by mainstream news outlets, are appearing to be engaging in a data-altering practice called herding. I can get more into how herding works in another video if you want, but the short version...
I just want it known that I did my big ramble about all of this, about the herding and the AI and everything, that I did it before consulting other sources, okay? I arrived at these positions independently with my big shiny head, and now everyone else is agreeing with me, okay? All right. This free thinker.
Version is that pollsters who heard their results are deliberately shifting any data points they see as outliers closer to what other similar surveys are showing so that if they end up being wrong, they don't get singled out as an unreliable pollster and are seen as more in line with the crowd. But what happens when a lot of different surveys on the same subject start herding is that it forms a vicious cycle that causes those data points to grow tighter and tighter until you inevitably end up with a poll projection calling for a dead heat that actually isn't representative of what the unaltered data shows. Another problem is that a lot of pollsters are still spooked by what happened in 2016 when pretty much every polling source...
oh man. It's so f***ed up that we have freedom of speech. I'm anti-freedom of speech. If you're one of the pollsters responsible for this, I genuinely think there should be criminal charges, and I'm not even kidding. At least civil liability. It's just f***ed up that you can lie and ruin everything forever. Like, you could, like, nothing can matter. All information is dead. Everything sucks forever, and all of it is because it's okay to lie and there are no consequences because no one can call you on the lie because you're being lied to. I'm so frustrated. There needs to be some law. I don't know how you would structure that law in a way that wouldn't be overtly dictatorial. Maybe just let me decide. The law is that I, Ian Koczynski, get to decide. I'll point to people. Appointed New York Times Siena pollsters. Sorry, that one looks like bullshit. You're going to the volcano. Your ass is going straight to the caldera. You're being sacrificed to Quetzalcoatl. All right? I know Quetzalcoatl wasn't their sun god. I'm sorry. I don't remember the Aztec sun god. You're going to have to forgive me for that one.
Was calling an easy win for Hillary, but Trump ended up drastically overperforming on election night, proving pretty much every election prediction incorrect, save for people like Alan Lichtman and the Selzer poll. This means that a lot of polls are worried about the same thing happening again for Trump, so most surveys are overinflating
Isn't Quetzalcoatl some RuneScape thing? Open the schools.
his poll projections to cover their bases, which is compounding the problem of hurting and leading to even
Quetzalcoatl was the god of, like, medicine in the fields and stuff. So we send them to the feudal lands. Let all of the New York Times Siena pollsters, like, forever harvest wheat in a field bleached by a scorching sky as a giant winged serpent, like, flies over them and occasionally basks them in a wake of flame, you know? Is that not fitting? He was also associated with the sun, to be fair. Well, they all were. It was a pantheon, right? Subject the pollsters to the, you know, the wrath of Quetzalcoatl, okay? If their harvests are insubstantial. That's all I want.
further artificial inflation of Trump's chances in the election, and is ignoring the fact that
Huitzilopochtli was the Aztec sun god. Gotcha. Now he won't kill me.
the 2024 election is materially different in a lot of important ways from the 2016 election. This also isn't accounting for groups like Patriot Polling, which are owned by conservative interests and deliberately inflate Trump's numbers so that if he loses, it lends more credence to the false idea that Harris stole the election from him. And finally, we have the issue of Nate Silver, who is often cited as a pollster when he is in fact only aggregating other people's polls and creating averages based on those polls across the board, regardless of whether or not the source is
Genuine question: if Harris is legitimately leading and pollsters are skewing it against her, isn't this beneficial for her since blowing out polling could cause overconfidence? No, because that's exactly what they want. They want all the polling to make it look dead even, and then for Kamala to overperform everywhere. And then Republicans are like, see, how is she overperforming every poll? There's no way, it's impossible. How is Kamala Harris doing so well? It must be cheating. That's the goal. Like, it seems like this entire thing from the very beginning was orchestrated with the intention of facilitating the steal. That wasn't the case back in 2020. The propaganda lead up was like starting from, you know, COVID and a few months back, but like the polling wasn't being conducted in a fashion to facilitate that. The pollsters, I think, were organically wrong. Like they were incorrect in a much more organic way. In this case, I am struggling to find an explanation for this level of cohesion that doesn't come down to the pollsters are complicit and should be sent to the fields to be basked in the wake of flame of Quetzalcoatl as he flies by displeased with their crop yields. This is where we're sending the New York Times Siena pollsters, okay? We're gonna dust off like South Mexican temple somewhere in a jungle that people don't go to because the spiders there are really big. POV, you are a former New York Times Siena pollster and you have only produced 18 bushels of wheat this season. I'm sorry. I just really hate them. I'm just...
is bias. Nate Silver is essentially the Rotten Tomatoes of polling in that his numbers and projections are largely arbitrary aggregations and averages of polls at large that mislead the general public into assuming that all poll sources are equally trustworthy when they are not. Even worse, his models often include betting surveys and gambling odds, which are directed at predicting odds with the highest potential risk to reward ratios, not the most likely results. All of this has led to the sustained illusion of a dead heat between Trump and Harris, while the most reliable sources have been calling it a Harris-favored race for a while, such as Alan Lichtman and Ipsos poll. The main reason...
Okay, most reliable sources, Lichtman. Let's not... This we might be doing blue QAnon stuff here. I agree with all the reasoning. I don't like Lichtman.
And you're seeing sources like CNN and CBS suddenly changing their poll predictions to Harris blowouts as of last night at the last minute is because these sources didn't want to be the first ones to post Harris leading projections and were waiting for more reliable sources like the Iowa Selzer poll to call it first so they could...
Does Lichtman get the Quetzalcoatl? Depends on whether or not he's right, but I don't think Lichtman is like complicit in vote in poll herding. I just think he's kind of a crank. However, if this all works out as he predicted, let him turn the keys atop the temple, okay? Lichtman will be the priest who supervises the altar as they bring the bushels of wheat in. You don't know how to turn the keys, Silver! That was so I can't believe he was getting lambasted for that, man. You don't understand the keys. You wouldn't know how to turn the keys even if they were right in front of you. I gotta respect him for that. I might end up I might end up unironically becoming an ironic Lichtman guy, you know? I might I don't know. The more we exist in an environment where it's impossible to make predictions because all the data is completely the more you should make decisions based entirely on vibes. And that might be the way things are going.
Claim crowd mentality in case of a miss on this year's prediction. Long and short of it, no one wants to be the first to get it wrong. They want to claim, oh, well, they misled us. And overall, the rapid adjustments that we are seeing in mainstream polls in the past 72 hours is a result of...
He could be Secretary of Defense for all I care as long as she wins. Is the keys, the two keys you turn to the right at the same time to launch the ICBMs. He's...
of using fallacy-riddled models and projections for a good chunk of this year, and those models finally falling apart in the face of more historically reliable polls
to launch
and
the
more
truth
accurate
nuke
data coming through instead of deliberately herded results. And none of this is to say that you should skip voting. Go vote anyway. Don't get complacent.
Got to get like 413 electoral votes for Kamala Harris. Alan Lichtman in his command center cooking a feverish key post. He's turning all the missile silo doors are slowly opening, alarms flashing as the Lichtman stands running around, like disengaging, like pulling the fuel pumps out from the truth nuke on the bed of launch. Have you seen the new Onion video? Yeah, it's actually maybe like the funniest thing in the world. I'm just really worried about copyright. You don't think the Onion couldn't possibly be dicks about Content ID, right? There's no way, right? Like we're all pro Onion here.
New polling out this week shows a tight race in a handful of hotly contested swing states. Joining me now to break down the numbers is ONN's Jason Copeland at the Big Map.
Thanks, Dwight.
We're so
seeing really interesting trends in a lot of key battleground states. Let's start with Pennsylvania with its coveted 19 electoral votes. And I want to focus for a moment on Erie County up here. This is a crucial swing county. It goes Trump in 2016, narrowly back to Biden in 2020. Now, I want to go in even further than that. This right here, this is Mill Creek Township, District 2. Polls are showing momentum toward Harris in areas like this. But to really understand what's going on, let's go even closer, zoom in a little bit more. Right here, right here. This is 114 Hilltop Lane. Now, I want to take us inside the bedroom here. Bear with me. There we go. So this is Nick Camden, 37-year-old registered independent. He goes Hillary in 2016, Trump in 2020. Which way is he going to go in 2024? Really hard to say at this point. It's pretty early, but we know it's going to be close.
And Jason, what are you seeing inside this person that might indicate movement one way or another?
So this is just a very ordinary Rust Belt body, small town values, predominantly white. It's got the lungs, it's got the vascular system, the heart, but I actually want to show you what's in here. This is the neocortex and the amygdala. These are areas of the brain responsible for regulating emotion and memory. So let's play out a couple of scenarios here. If, for example, this man remembers his grandmother and the time she took him to an Al Gore rally in 1999, feels good about that, that's a win for the Democrats. On the other hand, take a look at this. This is the area of the brain that's associated with social interaction and groups, and we've seen it light up when Nick goes out for beers with his Trump-supporting coworkers. So we're looking at really a thin margin here. I want to show you something, actually. Let's come back out. Let's go past the rib cage, past the lungs, past the heart, past the tumor. Healthcare going to be a really big issue in this election, obviously. Past the DNA to what we're calling the source, the origin of life, existence itself, where all of humanity's answers can be found.
And can we zoom in further than that?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm scared. But what we can do is we can actually zoom out here, out of the DNA, out of Nick Camden, out of Erie, Pennsylvania, out of the solar system to the edges of our cosmos, where we see ultimately how meaningless this whole race really is and how insignificant all of our tiny little lives really are.
That is a big map. Thank you, Jason. Coming up next, the Trump campaign is in full-on damage control after footage leaked of the candidate being extremely rude.
In perilous times of great uncertainty, across every corner of a...
We are so back, man. We're genuine. Also, that felt like a little microcosm of an entire one of my streams. Genuinely, I felt like I was taken on a journey from your perspective into like the... Let's talk about politics 15 minutes in. It all comes down, the human beings are animals. They have no consistent thoughts or feelings. Consciousness is non-continuous. You're not the same person when you wake up as you are when you fall asleep. Nothing matters. Logic doesn't matter. Rhetoric doesn't matter. It's all just neural signals. Me, 2 hours after that, life's still pretty good though. It's all right. It's okay. I think people are all right, like on average. Yeah, me 1 hour later. Yeah, I don't think, like, I would be okay with a quarter zip, but only if it was in like a terry cloth, like in a rugby kind of athletic way. I don't like it in a merino wool because I think, you know, wool sweaters should have texture. Yeah, then me 1 hour later, thank you for the additional 5 gifted tier 1 subs, Sake. That is true. That probably would have been a great video if I'd looked at it. Okay, guys, we're 38 minutes over. That's it. That's a whole Voss stream right there. I needed that. The Onion's back. We're so back. ONN doesn't miss. Their old shit is gold. Isn't it crazy how, not to say that it wasn't the case before, but it really is great how The Onion got funnier and funnier the more actively partisan they became towards the left. Like, The Onion has always been left-leaning, and it has always been funny, but it feels like like at some point, like 2 or 3 years ago, they were like, let's like just commit to the line here, and they found their voice again, and they just got like funnier, you know?